The Antonio Villaraigosa Leadership Award was first presented to Mayor Villaraigosa in 2012 in Orlando as he closed his term as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. At that time, we announced the award would be named in his honor to recognize outstanding mayors who are dedicated to bringing their diverse communities together to include us. Mayor Villaraigosa clearly set the gold standard of excellence by which all awardees are measured, and we are thrilled to have him with us once again. Please welcome the 41st Mayor of Los Angeles, the Honorable Antonio Villaraigosa, for remarks in the award presentation.
Speaking of birthdays, I'm reminded that next week I'm going to be 70 years old. And I'm reminded in no small part because when Julie got up, she reminded me that she had been to the Speaker's office when she was 13 years old. Mayor Romero reminded me that she was a young girl in high school or college and watched me back when I was speaker or mayor. And then our honoree today, looking at his bio and, kind of refreshing memories, he was in high school a volunteer for Congresswoman Susan Davis when she was an assembly member in my office. So I feel old today. But let me begin by recognizing Mickey Ibarra. You know what I've always said about Mickey, like every community, the Latino community is not homogeneous. There's sometimes internecine conflict among brothers and sisters in many of our cities. And almost everywhere in this country, Mickey can come in, fly in, bring all those warring factions together to celebrate a Latino leader, an African American leader, an Anglo leader, a Muslim leader, a Jewish leader, a leader who brings us together. And I think we need to acknowledge Mickey Ibarra and the Latino Leaders Network. In my own town, there was a man named Ed Roybal. He was the first city council member elected, I believe, in 1947. He was elected at a time when Latinos could not, and blacks, could not bathe in the pool. We could only go once a week when they cleaned. Well, before they cleaned the pool. And he was the first coalition builder in Los Angeles. And later came Tom Bradley. All of you have heard of him. Tom Bradley was the first citywide leader who brought African Americans and Latinos and Jews and Asians and all of us together around a rainbow. And I was fortunate enough to come down the line, and I always said, I'm here on the shoulders of others. I'm here on the shoulders of Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez, who I began working with when I was 15 years old. We're here on the shoulders of civil rights leaders who opened up our country. And today we get to celebrate the leaders who continue in that vein. And I couldn't be prouder to acknowledge a leader among us, Todd Gloria, mayor of San Diego. I mentioned that he first got started with Susan Davis when he was in high school. and I was already, I think, Speaker of the Assembly. But I watched him. I watched him over the years. He went on to go work for Susan Davis. He became her district director. He ran for city council. Some of you forget that he actually was an interim mayor for a period of time when the mayor at that time fell on hard times and made some pretty awful mistakes. And then he went on to the state assembly where he became assistant majority whip. And majority whip came back, and now he's mayor. But we're not just recognizing him because he's been a political leader. We're recognizing him because he's been a uniter. You know, to be openly gay in any city is tough, and particularly when you're the first. And I've always said, Todd, and I know you know this, Mayor, that when we break a glass ceiling and open up a door, we don't open up the door and bang on our chest and say how great I am. We open up the door because we know that we got to that door on the shoulders of others. And when we open up that door, we say, this door is open to all of us. That's the kind of leader Mayor Gloria has been in the legislature, on the council, and as mayor. Many of you know that San Diego was a fairly conservative town for a long time, and it's begun to change. This is a mayor who's made it a priority to connect with our neighbors in Mexico, who understands the frontier and that border with Mexico shouldn't be something that we rail against. It should be something that we celebrate. Our number one trading partner. And for San Diego, a partner in so many endeavors. And Mayor Gloria has led that effort. You already heard about his appointments. He's appointing finally in a town that is very brown and Asian and black and, you know, minority or majority of color. He's appointing appointees that look like San Diego for the first time. And that's what this is about. This isn't just a Latino award. As was mentioned, we've given this award to African Americans, probably more to African Americans than any other group, to whites, to women, to men, to people that bring us together. And right now in this country, that's what we need. So when we celebrate our nation's mayor here at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and in particular, when we celebrate mayors who bring us together and unite us at a time when this country is so divided, we should really celebrate. And so it's my honor to present an award. You know, the guy who had the best line was Mayor Garcetti. When I gave him this award, he said, "Oh, Mayor Villaraigosa, just what I always wanted, an award from Mayor Villaraigosa. I'm going to put it right on my desk." I thought it was the best line. And of course, I got up and I had a retort. But Mayor, I've watched you. I've watched you for a while. Been around, as has been mentioned, I've been around for a while. And I've watched you grow. And I've watched you lead. And I've watched you unite. And that's what we celebrate today. Mayor Todd Gloria, please come up to the podium. And Mickey Ibarra. We're going to put you in the middle. And then over here. Right here.
Thank you. Well, Mayor, I don't mind a photo of you on my desk. I don't know how I'm going to get this through TSA, though. I would have a little explaining to do. Mayor Villaraigosa, thank you so much for those extremely generous comments. You know, I was thinking about this moment for the few weeks since Mickey told me the good news, and I was thinking about my Puerto Rican grandmother who bought a home in the Claremont corner of San Diego on Goldboro Avenue. We have some San Diegans in the house. You may know where that is. Her view was of the University of San Diego, our local Catholic university. Good Catholic family, you might imagine. And I was the first in my family to go to college. And I think that it's because my grandmother, when she would look after me when my parents were working, we would sit in the front yard of her home looking up at that university, and she would say, "You are going to go to college there." Now, the idea of being in college a few blocks from my grandmother's house didn't really hold a lot of appeal, even as a young person. But in fact, that's exactly where I ended up going to college and being the first in my family to get a bachelor's degree. I share that story because there's an adage in politics that many of us have heard before, that if you haven't seen it, you can't be it. And I don't think it's any accident that no one before me and my family went on to college, because they didn't have that really there, that visual, that admonition that this is what you're going to do. And so when I think of Mayor Villaraigosa, I think of that, if you can see it, you can be it. And whether he knew it or not, a Dodger fan in LA, for a Padre fan down in San Diego. Too soon? Too soon? Oh yeah. Through his service, no matter how many years it may have been, and the most important answer, sir, is that you still look good. That's the most important part, am I right? Give it up for Villaraigosa, everybody, right? Through his trailblazing service, there's a little boy in San Diego, and I know young people all across our state and all across our country who saw your example and realized what they could be, and many of us are living up to that full potential. So for the doors that you opened, for the ceilings that you shattered through, thank you, thank you, thank you, Mayor Villaraigosa. I appreciate you. So look, this is not my first U.S. Conference of Mayors event, and I'm standing between you and happy hour, a second one, maybe? I know mayor's gone wild when you're outside of your own cities. I understand how this works. I will do my best to be brief. I talk really fast, so just listen fast too, okay? I definitely want to acknowledge Reverend Pierre. I thank you for the comments about the calories. I believe that same thing. Lord, please keep this off my body. This used to be show business for ugly people. Now here we are. So I need all the help I can get. Your prayers are appreciated. To my colleague, Mayor Romero, thank you for those extremely kind comments. You know, this can be lonely work. This can be lonely work leading your city, but it is the camaraderie between mayors that is so important. And to have a friend on the border like Mayor Romero, thank you so much for being here and for those extremely kind words. I also want to acknowledge our ambassadors who are here, Your Excellencies, thank you, particularly to my friend, Ambassador Moctezuma. You know, San Diego is proudly a binational community. And as mayor of the largest binational city in the country, the largest border city in the country, you can imagine my frustration when I hear the way people describe the border, which is so different from what it actually is. We are a better city, a stronger city, a more prosperous city because of our proximity to Mexico, and I appreciate you, Ambassador, for the strong relationship that we have together. To Julie, thank you for those extremely kind comments. You can imagine that little boy in that front yard in Claremont, imagining someone from the White House, even knowing my name, let alone saying the kind things that you've mentioned. I appreciate our partnership, our relationship, and I definitely appreciate having the strong partner that President Biden is to cities. In my life, there has never been a better mayor for cities, and I definitely appreciate the president, the vice president, your entire administration for the open door policy that you have with all of us. I think a lot of the mayors here would echo those comments, and thank you very much for being here. To my friend, Lydia Martinez. Lydia's really glad that she retired from Southwest recently. But what I say is, even when I couldn't get home on Christmas, too soon as well? It's okay. I've flown him 3 times since then, so it's all good. But it was Lydia who I was thinking about. You know, like, this is a good company. It's all going to work out just fine. I got my voucher. We're all good. But here's the thing. What I know about Lydia is that she cares deeply about her community. That's what made her brilliant at her job. and is what causes her to, even in retirement, continue to serve her community. I'm appointing her to our regional airport authority, because if you've been to Terminal 1 in San Diego, I apologize. Come back in a couple years, we'll have a new one for you, and it'll be because of Lydia's leadership, and I appreciate you, Lydia. And last but not least, of course, to Mickey Ibarra, who brings us all together. I've never seen so much charisma, so much persuasion, so much energy. Mickey, I'm so pleased to know you, and I'm grateful for the trailblazing role that you have played in really creating this opportunity, not for this award, which I deeply appreciate, but to bring us all together. You know, I make jokes about no one really missed rubber chicken dinners during the pandemic. I missed going out to eat. I missed seeing my friends in person, hanging out with my grandparents or whatever. But 10-top table, chicken, little special sauce. No one missed that. What we missed was being together and the camaraderie. And so, Mickey, you are a convener of Olympic proportions, and I thank you for creating these opportunities to bring us together, as you've had throughout your entire career. So I promised I wouldn't keep you long. My staff wrote a lot of policy points, and they're brilliant, and I love you guys. But we're going to skip that because it's like 9:08, and there's a vodka soda waiting somewhere out there. So let me say, for those of you that are wondering, you heard Puerto Rican, Native American, Filipino, Dutch, and gay. The first in San Diego history. Can you believe that? That combination has never happened before, ever in the city's history. I mean, you're like, how? And the answer is the Navy. That's how. Like, from all around the world, my grandparents found their way to San Diego, and they stayed because it's amazing, right? You are saying this is warm weather. Are you insane? It is 70 degrees back home. It's lovely weather. San Diego is an amazing place to be, and my grandparents stayed, and they built a life for themselves there. And what I wanted to share with you was maybe two quick stories. One is about how far we have come, because I think it's illustrative of what the Latino Leaders Network is about. Now, my grandparents, that home in Claremont I mentioned to you, my grandparents, when they tried to buy that home in the late 1950s, they were told no. There's not here. You don't belong in this neighborhood. You are not allowed here. Now, if you met my Puerto Rican grandmother and my Filipino grandfather, and you recognize that they couldn't even really get married easily, and that was a hard fight, right, to actually legally get married in California at that time, you wouldn't be surprised that they fought their way and they did buy that house. But they had to put more money down than anybody else on that block. Any other family was charged less than they were charged for the privilege and opportunity to live in what was considered a white neighborhood. My grandfather, in my life, I never saw him in anything other than a three-piece suit, in my whole life. Mowing the lawn of that home in Claremont, he did it in a three-piece suit. Now, as a kid, I thought he was a little bit weird. And truth be told, he was a little bit weird. But the reality that I didn't understand until I was a grown man was that my grandfather wore that suit to communicate to the world around him that he was a man worthy of respect. Without that suit, he did not believe he would be treated fairly, reasonably, in a legal manner. And so that's what he had to do. And I share that story of being denied the opportunity to get married, to being denied to be able to buy a home, to be able to have to wear a suit in a blazing hot summer day and mowing your lawn because you were afraid otherwise people would see you as something less than a man. 2 generations later, that couple's grandson became the mayor of the city of San Diego. I share that story because I think we have to celebrate our successes, big and small. We have tremendous victories that have been delivered to us by great leaders like Mayor Villaraigosa, like the Biden administration, so many other things, but we can't lose sight of the fact of how far we have come as a community. And Lord knows we still have a long way to go, but I was a history major in college, and by the way, don't be the first in your family to graduate from college majoring in history, because my parents were like, are you gonna have a job? Like, does that pay anything? Like, you can get a job later? For the record, I never moved home, and I've never required my parents' help, but I was a history major because it's important to me to chart how far we've come, and we've come a long way, and so many people in this room are really responsible for that. And I thank all of you for the contributions that you make in opening the doors of opportunity a bit wider for all of us. The last story I wanted to share with you is just an explanation for why I do this work, because this is about service and contribution, bringing folks together and hopefully making progress. You know, growing up, a path to public service wasn't exactly the most likely thing that ever happened. My mom was a hotel maid, my dad was a gardener. Not surprisingly, those jobs don't necessarily help you make ends meet in a town as expensive as San Diego, even in the 1970s and 1980s. And growing up, there were periods of time when we couldn't afford a car in our family. It's nearly impossible today in San Diego. It was particularly difficult back then in San Diego. And so on occasion, we would have to borrow someone else's car just to be able to do basic needs in our family. And what we'd have to do when we'd borrow that car is my brother and I would be forced to wash that car when we were done. Bucket, soap, sponge, water, doing all of that. I remember thinking, that's strange. And then before we returned the car to somebody, we'd have to go fill it up with gas. And even gas in the 1980s was expensive. I mean, I know it's rough now in California. What y'all are paying out here is amazing. But in California, it's rough. But even then, it was true. Rough, high, expensive. Point is this. I'm like, Ma, Dad, why are we doing this? Why are we spending money on soap and water and sponges and buckets and gas if we are borrowing cars because we can't afford a car? And their answer to me was that you're supposed to leave things better than you found it. That is our responsibility in life, is to leave things better than you found it. Now, the maid and the gardener, who weren't registered to vote until I was doing a voter registration campaign in 1992, they didn't understand that that was a recipe for public service. It was the direction to me to say, go out and serve your community. If you love your hometown, then you're supposed to spend your life doing whatever you can to make it a better place. I think that's a unifying common denominator in this room, of people who are so committed to this community, to your respective cities, to this cause of local government, of democracy. And so I share that story because that is definitely a story born of immigrants, of working class families, of communities of color. And that's the work that I do every single day at City Hall, recognizing that there is a young person who's looking at my example today. And my hope is that I inspire them to follow beyond me, because you're right. We're the first, but the goal is to not be the last. And the work that I do and that I'm privileged to do is when I sit at that desk and can appoint qualified Latinas to lead multi-billion-dollar public agencies because they're good at it and they're qualified and they're going to do a great job, I use that opportunity to do that. When we restructure our infrastructure policies, recognizing that equity does have a component in infrastructure. Yes, as mayor of the city of San Diego, I got to fill potholes in every neighborhood. I got to do that. But I also have to acknowledge that of our 3,000 miles of paved roads in the city, that the 30 or so miles that are unpaved, never been paved, in the 8th largest city in this country, happen to be in the predominantly Latino and African American communities. So when we talk about equity, it does belong in the infrastructure conversation, because a pothole is bad, but you know what's worse? It's a dirt road, particularly after the storms that we've been experiencing in San Diego recently. All of this is to say, I have only done this job for 2 years. And so I am deeply appreciative of this early recognition, and I will take it as inspiration to make sure the last 6, God willing, San Diego, we have a lot of San Diegans in here. Cindy Martin, I need you to move back to San Diego, just in time to vote, okay? For the 6 more years that I'm able to do this work, that I will go to City Hall with this on my desk, Mayor, and remember my grandfather and grandmother, the trail that they blazed, the barriers they overcome, recognizing that whatever's thrown my way, it pales in comparison to what they had to endure to give me the opportunity to go to college, to run for office, to lead this city. And that I'll do it with the memory of my parents and my mother and my dad, understanding that my sole responsibility in this world is to leave it better than I found it. And I thank all of you for being partners in that effort to make sure that collectively we can leave this world better than we found it. Now, I want you to all go to have a great cocktail. I want you to make good choices the rest of your night. But I want you to come back to the conference tomorrow so that we can engage in the work that we're here to do, the work of making sure that we leave our country, our states, our cities, our communities better than we found it. Thank you all so much for this honor.